Hi everyone and welcome to Project 36, and as you saw in the title, not only will we be talking about the masterpiece that is Across the Spider-Verse, but also its sequel, Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. Before we get started, if at any point you enjoyed this video, I really appreciate if you could give this video a like, as that would really help out the channel. Thank you. Before we talk about Beyond the Spider-Verse and everything we know about the film so far, we need to talk about what we just saw, and my god was it a treat. With the movie exploring the trends and the essentials of being Spider-Man and all the sacrifices that comes, and with Miles, whether that is even necessary. To begin with, it's a very deep movie talking about the core of Spider-Man in general, with Miguel basically saying if somebody was meant to die and is a quote-unquote canon event, then they're meant to die in order to save the whole multiverse. If that was to be prevented, then that whole reality is gone. And obviously with Miles being Spider-Man, you can do both. Unfortunately, that's never really been the case. As being Spider-Man, there's always going to be consequences. You're either going to lose everyone or you're going to lose someone, and we saw that in many stories, comic books, movies, video games and what have you, that eventually, whether it's Peter Parker or not, Spider-Man will lose someone just because of the hero that he is and the themes of responsibility. And with the movie basically exploring that, with Jefferson Davis's death being a canon event, it's going to be really interesting to see how Beyond the Spider-Verse is going to tackle that. But more on that later. As we saw in the end, Miles is in a completely different universe, the universe in fact where his spider basically was created, where we also meet this universe's version of Rio, who looks exactly like she does in the 1610 universe, as well as Erin Davis, who looks to be a little older, or at least a little grayed out, but also a version of Miles Morales, who is basically this universe's version of the Prowler. And we come to find out that presumably one of the reasons as to why that's the case is because Jefferson Davis died in this universe, which of course led to Miles having a completely different life, especially one where Erin was still alive. Seeing basically an evil Miles is really interesting, especially when it seems like he doesn't have any redeeming qualities. But I would not be surprised if there was a way where this universe's Miles or even Erin do come to their senses and basically have like a redemption arc. However, it's obviously too early to tell, because of right now they trapped our Miles in their universe, who obviously looks like he's gonna get out just by using his Venom Blast alone. And then obviously in the 616 universe, we see Spider-Gwen, Penny Parker, Spider-Punk, Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, Spider-Bite, Spider-Man India, but obviously last but certainly not least, Spider-Man himself, Peter B. Parker, as well as his daughter Mayday Parker, basically teaming up in order to try and find Miles, since Gwen also did find out that he's in a completely different universe. Obviously, because of the spider that bit him, it registered its DNA instead of Miles's DNA, which would have sent him home if it weren't for the spider venom that was still in his bloodstream. So just seeing the original gang from the first movie returning, as well as new addition, is super special to see, and I really can't wait to see them trying to save Miles and basically bring him back to his own home dimension and try to save Jefferson Davis. And as well as obviously with the Spot being in the 1610 universe, just causing havoc, making sure that Miles actually pays and will presumably be responsible for Jefferson Davis's death as well. And just seeing the Spot in the movie is just so amazing, and just the animation in general is just 10 out of 10. But what we know so far about Beyond the Spider-Verse is that we know it's coming out next year. In fact, it's coming out March 29th, 2024. So it's going to be a little under a year, but still the wait is going to be painful. It kind of reminds me of when we had to wait after Infinity War for Endgame. So it's kind of like that all over again. But yeah, I can already tell it's going to be worth the wait. Thank God it's just coming out next year and not 5 years from now. Because I don't think I would have managed to be honest. But yeah, so thank God it's coming out next year. And not only that, but also the directors for Across the Spider-Verse is returning for Beyond the Spider-Verse. There are 3 of them, and those directors being Joaquim De Santos, Ken Powers, and Justin K. Thompson. They're going to return to direct the sequel, and of course the producers, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, have also co-wrote the script along with David Callahan. So the fact that the original creative team are going to return is also a really good sign. And of course, as we know, the cast will be returning, but there is also the fact that some Spider people were originally going to be in Across the Spider-Verse. According to Chris Miller, they are saved for Beyond the Spider-Verse instead. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Spider characters like Japanese Spider-Man, or even the 90s anime series Spider-Man, or even the live action Spider-Man. We did get a cameo of both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, though there were archive footage from their respective first Spider-Man films. It was still great to see see that in the actual movie, basically just showing their events were basically canon events as well. But yeah, so obviously the original cast across the Spider-Verse will be returning, and with Grant's basically Spider team, their voice actors will most likely also play a huge role. We'll be given more lines as well by default. Yeah, it's really going to be cool to see them in action, as well as what other Spider people were saved for this movie. I have no doubt they're going to be amazing. But yeah, so far that's kind of all we know when it comes to Beyond the Spider-Verse. It's more or less what we're going to be expecting from Across the Spider-Verse, but in terms of theories and what could happen, what we might see from the film, this is just a theory, by the way, so if you disagree or you want to chip in your own theory, definitely do so in the comments down below. But of course, in that movie, I think we will find out the fact that Miguel wasn't 100% correct. Canon event basically being set in stone and could potentially destroy its universe. The reason why I say that is because Miles himself is proof. The spider that bit him wasn't originally going to bite him. In fact, it was actually going to bite the Miles Morales in Earth 42. However, because the Spark sent that spider to his home dimension, which it found Miles and bit him, it caused Earth 42 to not have a Spider-Man whatsoever. That's why it's filled with crime. It's basically in ruins because they didn't have a Spider-Man to protect them. And Miles is basically just turned into a villain, since especially now that his dad died, which was most likely a canon event in his story. Even though Miles was an anomaly because a spider from another universe bit him, it doesn't mean he's a mistake or anything like that. It doesn't mean he can't have canon events or that he's a mistake. It's just that he happens to be proof that canon event can be prevented, though with a sacrifice. Like for example, for him, it was of course the Peter Parker in his Earth who was killed by Kingpin, as well as later on the Prowler Aaron Davis who also gets killed by Kingpin. So not everything is set in stone. There are some things that needs to happen in order to prevent it from being collapsed, like of course with Captain George Stacy, or you know, with Captain Singh in Spider-Man India's universe. However, with Jefferson Davis, I think Miles will find a way, though he will most likely pay a price. What that price is, I'm not too sure. It might be a death. I don't think it has anything to do with, you know, his mom Rio or anything like that. Even though she does die in the comics by Venom, I don't think they're going to be doing that in the third film. I might make a video about it in the future, but I do think if Miles was going to save Jefferson Davis, he's going to pay a price. But yeah, so I do think that's going to happen. Since this version of Miguel is very paranoid, he doesn't want anything to be different, and even if they are, he wants everything to play out as it's supposed to be, so their universe can't collapse. As we know, he lost his multiversal daughter and her universe, and he doesn't want anything like that to happen to anyone else. So I definitely think that's the case, which would be pretty interesting to see, because at the end of the day, anyone can be Spider-Man. That's the message of the character, and that's the message of those movies. It's how you wear the mask, that's what counts. And by the time Beyond the Spider-Verse comes out, I would not be surprised at all if it ends up being the greatest comic book trilogy of all time. However, what about you guys? What do you think will happen in Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, especially with everything that we know so far? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to be making more videos about it and theory videos, especially about some cameos that shows up in this movie. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. If you enjoyed this video, please like. I want more, subscribe. To begin, Protocol 36.